Hello and welcome to the BuildASoil Family Farms YouTube channel. This is episode 5. Today I'm going to show you, oh, here comes the sun. Okay, so today we're going to show you how we trellis our tomatoes. We've put them in the ground, we've given them time to grow, get their roots attached. It's really exciting because I'm going to show you how we prune them, how we trellis them. Also show you a little bit about what we've got going on here in our beds. We have our tomatoes, and we grew radishes this year in the sides of the beds, and this is mainly because as our tomatoes are growing tall and before we're going to get to harvest them, we have a crop to sell. I'm really excited to show you guys today how we do this. It's a really fun job and it's super exciting watching the plants grow. It's springtime here in western Colorado and we have kind of crazy weather during springtime. So outside, I don't know if you can see the things flapping around on the greenhouse, but it's really windy today. It's decently cold and we have intermittent sun. It can be really deceiving in the springtime because it's very cold outside, but it stays very warm in the greenhouse. So as you get busy doing other things on the farm, it's really important to either have your drip line set up and know your times and get timers going so that you don't forget, or you just check often. Actually been hand watering this whole time. So we want to turn our drip system on so we don't have to do any more hand watering. But one of the things that comes along with that is some plants are wetter than others. So we're actually having to really monitor that in this weather and make sure things don't get too dry. It's been about 6 weeks since we planted the seed, and then another 3 weeks to harden them off and get them ready for this process. So we started them in the 10 by 10. We brought them over here when they're about 5-6 weeks old into the greenhouse. Things were warm enough. We turned our heaters up to 55. At nighttime, the heaters maintain that temperature so our tomatoes don't get stunted or have any health issues along the way. We laid out all our tomato plants along the greenhouse. We dug a hole for each plant. Our spacing is, so we were aiming for 18 inches, but somehow we ended up planting them at 24 inches. So our tomatoes are actually 2 feet exactly apart. I'm not really sure how that happened, but we kind of chuckled about it. And I think we'll have a lot of extra room for growth this year as far as them not being just right on top of each other. So when we're taking the plant and pressing it down, I don't know, like I think I've said before, it's like snugging it in, tucking it into bed, but it gives it a stronger root base. And so if you're not taking that plant, putting the soil in and really tucking it in, it's not got a sturdy base, and the top could kind of fall over when you're watering. Maybe you knock it or something, but it's just best to always really get it in nice and tight. That way the roots feel like they can start to grow out. Once we did that, we covered them all up. We went and mixed up root-wise and aloe, and we went through every single plant with our 3.5 gallon Chapin, and we watered them all in and gave them some root-wise. So that'll really help. That biology helps with the connection between the soil and the roots of the plant and allows them to really start taking up nutrients and hooking their roots up and growing, which is what we want them to do. Once we did that, we watered everything in. We waited about 3 weeks. We don't want to start trellising plants right away, pruning them, because they really need to establish that root zone and start taking in nutrients, and you want to see visible growth and probably double, maybe triple what it was when you planted it before you really start even messing with it. So there are some plants here in the greenhouse that you can maybe see here in the background. They have lighter colored leaves on the bottom. They're kind of the older leaves that they've kind of stopped taking up nutrients, and I'm really looking at new growth all the time. If my new growth doesn't look good, then there may be something wrong with your plant. But if some of those underleaves are dying off and you have just beautiful tops, then you're doing something right. And I wouldn't mess with it at that point. It's definitely a concern to some people when you see those lowers looking like that. But really, the plant is now going to start just putting energy into top growth, and so this is no longer needed. When they're really small, I don't cut these off right away. I want to, because I'm totally OCD and I want everything to look perfect. So I want to come through and cut them all off, but they need that leaf foliage to transpire. So if you cut it all off and you're watering, you could potentially overwater your plant because there's not enough trying to take up water. So I definitely leave them on for a little bit, and as we go through the greenhouse, we prune all that dead stuff off, and I feel very satisfied when everything looks really healthy. Today, like I said, I want to show you how to trellis tomatoes, how we do it here. We have these wonderful rollers up here that have string attached to them. We pull the string down, attach it to the plant, and now we can use that as a guide for our plant to go straight up vertical. whilst taking off all the unnecessary growth that we don't need and encouraging just top growth. So when it gets to the top with these rollers, they have a lot of strength, and we actually can drop the plant and give it more space to grow and grow them all the way down the aisle. We send them all the way that way, and then we bring them back this way. So I'll show you that as the plants get taller and we end up doing that. It's really the funnest thing to do. We have two types of tomatoes. There's a determinate tomato and an indeterminate tomato. In our greenhouse, because we're trying to grow them all the way to the top, we don't want to be growing any determinate tomatoes, because a determinate plant only gets a certain height and a certain width, and it won't let you prune it into this big long plant. An indeterminate plant can grow as tall as you can possibly trellis it, support it, and give it all the love it needs. So that's what we use in our greenhouse, is only indeterminate tomatoes, because like I said, we can maximize yield, growth, and production. Now I'm going to show you how we trellis our tomatoes. First thing I'm going to show you is the different parts of a tomato plant and how to avoid maybe topping your plant. One of the things I don't do is start in the middle of a bed, and that's so that you don't miss things. And you're probably going to hear me say that over and over and over again as I'm doing these videos, because it's really important. This row in particular, they're my favorite tomatoes. I said that before when we were in the 10 by 10. These are called the Marvories. They're a white heirloom tomato. I was super interested in growing them because I love kind of like weird stuff that you don't find at the grocery store. These are really strong genetics. They're amazing plants. You can see as we look down at them that they have beautiful, healthy stalks. Pretty much the entire row is like this. And not only is it genetics, but we have wonderful conditions in our greenhouse. We have the misters. We've been growing in here for 4 years now, very consistently turning over beds, amending soil. If I dug around in here, which I'm not going to do right now, there's just worms everywhere. You know, we found a toad in here. It's just pretty cool when you start to see all that life that really mimics nature, and you know that you're doing something right. So the structure, plain simple structure of a tomato plant. On most tomato plants, you're going to have your top, and you're going to have a sucker, and you're going to have a leaf. We always want to keep our tops. Our tops are going to be what we keep growing the entire way up. This basically is just going to keep going and going and going and going. So as you prune, you're creating hormones that are going to send more energy to the top of the plant. We really want our plant to be focusing on just top growth. Right now, at this stage of the greenhouse, I don't want to be growing large tomatoes. I'm trying to get my plants at least 2 feet tall before I start letting them flower. And that's mainly so that we can trellis them and they have that support to hold those fruits when they come out. So right now today, as we go through and trellis them, I'm going to be cutting off my suckers because we don't want extra tomato plants growing, just our regular tops. And I'm going to be cutting off any flower pods that I see, attaching my trellis line, and then making sure it's being guided all the way to the top. I can see at the bottom, you can see this. This is actually a sucker. I've already cut these bottoms off when I planted it, so I definitely don't want anything near the ground, and I don't need to keep any of that bottom growth. When you do trellis them, we end up using a little clip, and it'll go around the bottom, and it needs something to kind of hold on to, right? So as I prune these lower ones, I'm going to take off my sucker. You can see that I just took that off. And then I'm going to leave a little bit right here so that I have somewhere for the clip to hold so that it doesn't just slide up the plant. So as you can see, I left 2. Sometimes I only leave 1, but I like to leave somewhere for the clips. The next thing I'm going to do is come in and just take off all these little suckers here. As you can see, I've got another one here. You don't necessarily need to use scissors. Sometimes I just come in with my fingers and do it. I would probably take this one off because I don't need it. I still have enough foliage here to not overwater my plant. It can still grow. It's not going to shock it at this point because it's a very healthy plant. I actually have one more sucker, so let's go over that one more time. You have your main stem, leaf, and a sucker. And because I have my top and that's what I'm focusing on, I'm going to go ahead and take this one as well. And then the other thing I mentioned was that these flower pods, even though this breaks my heart, I'm going to go ahead and take it off. Because right now, if I was to let these tomatoes grow, they're going to be too big and heavy for this tiny little plant. It's actually going to take a lot of energy from vertical growth, which is what we're trying to focus on. I want them 2 feet tall at least before I start letting the fruit grow. If you get to the top here and you don't know what's what, I highly advise you just leave it and let it grow until you're like, oh, that's for sure a sucker and that's for sure my top. It's always very confusing when you end up with this here and you see two tops basically. I know because of experience that this here is my sucker and that this is going to end up being my top. Also, usually the fruit pod will be growing out of which one is your top. So either way, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to let this one grow. Reason being, guys, the other reason why I like to take these early suckers off is because if you let this grow too big, it's going to push your actual top this way and this one this way. And then you're going to end up you're going to have to pull your top back for trellising, and that could snap your top. So I like to get the suckers off as early as I can. Careful when you're putting your ladders down if you do have beds like this, because your beds are softer than your aisles, and sometimes I get up there and it sinks in and knocks me off. So we have these rollers with a ton of string on them. You can see here, this roller has these little divots, and that's what holds the string from just unrolling. So when you squeeze this, it releases that, and I can actually start to just pull a line out. And surprisingly enough, these hold like 60-pound plants, which is pretty cool. And now I bring the string down all the way to the ground there. I think they're just called vine clips. These I found to be the strongest. We also have some like white clearish ones that we've bought off Amazon, and they're very weak. So I don't use them when I'm clipping up a plant intending to hold weight. You've got to have something that's going to really hold the weight of your plant all the way through the season. So it's important. And so remember how I said we left those notches? I will take my clip. These little teeth right here, they go over the string, and when you close it, it won't move. Just make sure that you've got that little notch over the string, otherwise it's not going to hold anything. So then we come down here. One of the things that I try to teach everybody when I'm teaching them to trellis is that you don't want to put your clip down here loose. So see, if I do that, you've got it super loose and there's really nothing stopping the plant from still falling over. So I like to take my string, I pull it very tight. I raise the clip up just above where I'm going to be hooking it to, and I sort of angle it down. And then that way you've got a nice firm grip. Two things that people like to do. I could throw another clip on here, but the other thing that you can do in these early stages is wrap it just to give it a little support. That way, now I'm guiding it up the string the same way I would do it with a clip, and I don't want to waste clips. That's basically it. Let's move on to the next one, and I'll do it a little quicker. Here we go. I don't want to keep any of these suckers down here or any of my super low branches. I'm going to keep a notch here for my clip. I'm going to go through and take off any of these little suckers. Again, there's two tops. My main stem continues off this way. It doesn't elbow out here, so I'm going to go ahead and take this even though it's the one standing straight up. The main goal is to get them off as soon as possible if you're growing for production like we are. And then taking that top, and we want it to go straight up, we're trying to encourage it straight up. So now I'm just going to put one there for guidance. It's pretty amazing to see all the growth just in this short amount of time with a lot of tender love and care for each plant. When things are a lot bigger, you can more or less go through the greenhouse and take care of them all as a whole, but when they're small and they're little, it's very important to tend to them as each individual plant may need something. We're thinking about doing some like FAQ style videos soon, so please feel free to leave any questions down there that you may want answered. Even though I don't have all the answers, I'm definitely learning as I go. I really just love sharing with you guys everything that we do. I really do love what we do here at the farm. So look at Josh's badass shirt. Okay. Don't forget to get your workout in, and thanks for watching today. Leave any comments or questions you may have. See you on the next episode.